Welcome to the Blueprint Podcast, where we throw out the old blueprint so you can become who you were always meant to be. I'm your host, Jason Smith, and if you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button and share this podcast with your friends on social media and tag me in it at JaybirdFit. Today, I have a very special guest for you, Chloe Harrouche. Chloe is co-founder and CEO of the Lanby, concierge medicine that integrates primary care, functional medicine, and wellness. At 23, Chloe was diagnosed with breast cancer, an experience that revealed the gaps in healthcare and inspired her mission to change it. She's also the host of the podcast, Get Well Better. Chloe, welcome to the Blueprint Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. So when we get into this, what does get well better actually mean?
It's a great question. I think for us, we approach this problem from the perspective of patients who felt like they had all of this motivation to get well, but didn't have an easy, straightforward path to do so. The health industry is very hard to navigate. The wellness industry is increasingly muddled with misinformation. And so I think as a patient or as a consumer, however you want to describe us, it's really hard to feel like you have the right information at your disposal to be able to achieve better health. And when I say achieve better health, that could be one of two things. One, it could be find relief from current symptoms that you're experiencing and really attacking the root cause of those symptoms, as opposed to putting a Band-Aid solution on it and just masking the problem. And then the other side of it is finding ways to build increased resilience within your health so that you can really mitigate future disease risk as much as possible and feel a lot more empowered going into the aging process, feeling like you have your best foot forward. And I think that a lot of people today feel like they don't have what they need in order to achieve that.
I recently just went through something myself with that aging process where we start to experience that low testosterone. And of course, your general practitioner, they'll do a test and they check your total testosterone, but they don't check your free testosterone. And there's all these different tests that you have to ask for in order to be able to even come close to understanding what's going on inside of your body. And of course, you never hit this root cause, like what's actually causing the low testosterone. Is it stuff that's in my environment? Is it, the microplastics in your body? What is that that's actually going on? And I feel it's frustrating because they're very quick to put you on hormone replacement therapy, but they're not quick to tell you like, hey, actually, we're going to do 5 more tests. We're going to dive into this a little bit deeper, and we're going to try to get to the root cause of this because you're an otherwise healthy human being. You eat well, you do the low-hanging fruit in life, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So this actually seems out of place or an anomaly in your life. So what would you tell somebody that's going through exactly that?
I think that there's a few different scenarios where this manifests. A lot of people hear that there's issues with low testosterone in social media. And so they go to their doctor and they say, I feel like I should be getting my testosterone levels tested. And most doctors will respond, if you're not having any symptoms, we're not going to even test it. That's to me the craziest response that you might get from a doctor. And I think that they don't really know, these doctors specifically, the importance of testosterone when it comes to longevity and how you could be flying under the radar, not realizing that what you're experiencing isn't normal. And that's a huge problem, right? The other side of it is people who do feel normal, do get their levels checked, and they actually have low testosterone. And they're like, wait a second, is this concerning? And one of the ways in which we approach that is we say, do you have any symptoms? And if they don't have any symptoms and they're past the age in which they're also trying to conceive and start a family and they're no longer thinking about, that's when we can have the conversation around, let's try lifestyle factors before we entertain the idea of testosterone replacement therapy. Because to your point, there are so many things that we could do to increase testosterone, but if it's not debilitating your quality of life, we don't want you to be on testosterone replacement therapy because then you have to be on it for the rest of your life. And so if there are root causes that we can be tackling, let's start there. And then if we're not seeing progress and you're past that conception phase of life, that's when TRT could be a good fit. And again, I'm not the physician here. I just am so often seeing this conversation play out with patients. And that's what I think is important, to be able to have that conversation with your provider and really have them not necessarily shy away from the testing itself, and also not shy away from the challenging part of getting your testosterone levels up. Like there isn't always necessarily an easy fix for everything, but once you unlock that fix, it's going to be life changing and so much more sustainable.
Now, what's interesting is there's so much stuff on social media. You talked about the misinformation and malinformation that's out there, and we're constantly getting a lot of people talking about the topics that matter to them most. And how can we become our own best advocate when trying to sift through all of this different information that's out there?
Yeah. I think what's hard about advocacy is that sometimes you're advocating for yourself in an environment where there really is no outcome that is going to satisfy what you're looking for. There's just this mismatch in terms of capabilities or expertise that unfortunately exists across physicians and their patients. So what I mean by that is patients are going to the doctor thinking that doctors are the ones that can guide them on wellness, on optimizing their health, on longevity. This is not something most doctors have ever been trained on. And so when you say advocating for yourself, by asking your doctors to get your testosterone levels tested, or asking them to look at your ApoB levels or your LP little a levels, like they're going to look at you completely confused. And even if you do convince them to order these labs, they won't be able to interpret them with any clarity or confidence to be able to put you on the right path forward. And so it's almost like, why are we even fighting that battle? Instead, when we think about advocacy, we think about, let's put that energy towards the right resource. Let's invest in the right channel. And so that's where I think it's important for patients to be a little bit more deciphering in who they go to for care. Not to say that there isn't a place for conventional Western medicine, because of course there is. When you're dealing with an acute issue and you need help, that's when you want to go to your conventional doctors. But when you're looking to figure out the root cause, when you're looking to dive deeper into your health, when you're looking to optimize and think about your long-term health plan, that's when you want to be looking for a physician who has gone the extra mile, because it does require extra training and an extra investment on the physician's part to do the training, whether it's functional medicine, whether it's longevity medicine, whether it's integrative medicine. Like these are all modalities and ways of thinking that really stretch the scope of health beyond reactionary medicine.
What's even more interesting is a lot of people, thanks to AI, and AI is ultimately going to be a great tool. I'm crossing my fingers, but there's also a lot of nefarious things that happen with that. They're plugging in the results and a lot of personal information into things like ChatGPT because the doctors aren't giving them that feedback that they so desperately need, that they're trying to get so they can get to that root cause. The problem with that is there's no safety and security in the AI, and there's certainly no HIPAA. So all of that information is out there when you guys are doing that. So I highly encourage you, don't do that. Seek out a professional that can help you read those results and get you on the right path,
Yeah.
like
You
the Lanby.
I do think is helpful about AI is oftentimes you only get so much time with your physician. And again, this sort of more so exists in the context of traditional primary care or any specialty care. So, what's helpful with AI is being able to input your results and ask AI to feed you questions. What are the questions that I should go to the doctor prepared with so that I can make sure that in those 8 minutes, I know what to be asking? Because oftentimes patients aren't prepared. And so they feel very overwhelmed in those 8 minutes, like thinking, racking their brain to figure out, how am I going to maximize this time with the physicians and get all of my answers, that I need to feel confident and clear headed on what my path forward is. And so if you could use AI to just basically help start that conversation in your head, think about what are the things that you might be concerned about that maybe a doctor is just glancing over because they don't have enough time or because they aren't concerned about it, but you might be. These are the things that I think AI can be really helpful for. But of course, to your point, I would not use it as way to diagnose what's going on with you or get to the root cause. It's more of a way to start jiggering ideas and giving you options for consideration.
Yeah. Asking the right question can definitely lead you down a very different path than going in feeling completely underprepared and overwhelmed.
Yeah. Again,
Now,
you might be asking your doctor the right question. That doesn't mean that your doctor is equipped to answer it. And that's where, again, going back to the earlier point, you want to be investing in doctors that have that advanced training.
now, your personal story is unique, it's inspirational, and I'm assuming that it led you to where you are today with doing the work that you do. Can you share that with us?
Sure. Thank you for saying that. So I was 23 when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it really came out of nowhere. I was an otherwise healthy young adult. I was an athlete growing up. I came from a home where we ate most of our meals at home. I have no family history of breast cancer. Like in every sense of the word, I totally thought that this was some sort of mistake. And I was also someone who had been exposed to the healthcare industry professionally and academically. I was a bioengineer from undergrad at Penn and then went into healthcare consulting after that. So I was in and around medicine, understood medicine really well. And so when I went through my treatment process, I took the perspective of I want to do right by my doctors. I want to listen to everything they say. I want to be the most obliging patient possible because part of me felt that the way in which I would get more of their time was if they actually enjoyed spending time with me and didn't feel like I was a burden. And so I wanted to make sure that I hit all their goals. I wanted to say yes to every aggressive approach they had. I didn't want them to feel like, oh, here's Chloe. Now we have to go deal with whatever questions she has. So I never questioned their perspective. I was very much, okay, I'm going to put my head down, follow the standard of care protocol, and be on my way. And that's what I did. I did all of the things, didn't ask about what the long term risks of radiation were, didn't ask about anything to do with long term chemotherapy risk. Obviously, they shared a bit about the impact to my fertility, but that was crux of it. Anyway, after I was done with treatment, I started to ask my doctors, okay, now what? What am I supposed to do to minimize my chance of recurrence? Should I be changing my diet? Should I be taking supplements? Should I be exercising every day? I do not want this to happen again. What do I do to minimize recurrence? And they just said, nothing. Like you're doing all the things. You're a very healthy individual. Don't stress too much about it. As long as you are not overweight and you stay active, like you should be fine. And it was just such a rudimentary, superficial response that
Just
I
keep doing
felt,
what you're doing.
yeah, I just felt
Yeah.
like that wasn't enough. Like I clearly wanted more. I wanted more guidance. I wanted more personalization. I wanted to really take my health to the next level. And so that's when I realized oncology, definitely not where I should go to for optimizing my health. I ended up pivoting to primary care, thinking, okay, maybe in primary care, it's meant to be a first line of defense. It's meant to look at my health from a whole person perspective. Maybe they will be able to give me more guidance on prevention. And that's where I was like completely flabbergasted by gaps in healthcare. Most primary care doctors, even the ones that are concierge, only spend 8 to 15 minutes with you, and their guidance is so not rooted in wellness. There's no conversation about nutrition, no conversation about any other wellness modality. And so ultimately, it led me to realize if I want to be taking my health seriously, I really need to do this research on my own. And so that's what I did. I dove deep into wellness and became obsessed, and to a fault ultimately, because I did all of the things without any oversight, without any tracking of my labs, and ended up doing a lot of damage to my hormone health. So I was intermittent fasting, I cut out carbs, I was exercising every day. And when I lost my period, I went back to my doctors and said, should this be cause for concern? Is this chemotherapy? Is this something else? Like, why did I lose my period? I'm only, at this point, I was 4 years post being done with treatment. So I was 28 years old. I definitely should not be losing my period or be in early menopause. And they shrugged and said, we don't know. And so then I ignored the problem because if they weren't going to give me an answer, I just assumed that, I should just move on with my life and continue to do what I was doing. Like, how could wellness be the fault of this or the cause of this? and ended up, obviously at that point I was ready to start a family and went through IVF, sort of was given the same feedback. This is fine. You don't need a period to get pregnant. We will put you on the right hormones and get you pregnant. And they were able to get me pregnant, but I kept miscarrying. And when they couldn't give me a definitive reason why, I said, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, I can't keep putting myself through the devastation of a miscarriage. And so I ended up pursuing surrogacy and putting a pause on my health in a way that I wanted to really reassess everything. So I met with a functional medicine doctor for the first time and probably kicked myself in the head for not doing it sooner. But through that, realized that I had put my body in a state of stress. It's called hypothalamic amenorrhea. Basically, you either because of malnutrition or because of overexercise or because of just emotional stress, you can really shut your body down. And when your body is shut down in that way, your reproductive cycle just completely shuts down as a result as well. If your body feels like it's in fight or flight mode, it's definitely not going to feel like it has the resources it needs to foster life. And once I realized that, I took my wellness in a very different direction. And I realized that I had to completely unlearn everything that I had subscribed to when it came to wellness. And a lot of that is because of just a lot of the information out there is geared towards men. I think that's changing. I think a lot now is being geared towards women as well. But when you take guidance from a podcast or from a social media influencer or from a book, like all of these things are taken out of context. And context in medicine and in optimizing your health is super important. That's also why ChatGPT cannot be your sole provider. And so, what I ultimately craved and what I realized was missing in this whole journey was a better first line of defense, a better home base for me to have that oversight from a clinical perspective, really be looking at my labs from a truly deep, in a truly deep way to understand, okay, if I do want to be trying all of these different modalities, whether it's intermittent fasting, whether it's cutting out carbs, I need to see the impact that it has on my hormone health because at my age, hormones are very important to sustain. And by the way, I also am predisposed to Alzheimer's because I learned through my genes that I have the ApoE4 mutation. And so estrogen is incredibly important for me to maintain. And so if I had a team that actually understood my predispositions, my risks, whether it's breast cancer, whether it's Alzheimer's, whether it's general like metabolic health and longevity, guide me through wellness in a much more personalized way, my fertility, my life would look very different. And so I started to dream of what this model would look like. And through that, again, I'm very fortunate that I understand healthcare really well just because of my professional background. And so I was able to really think from a first principles approach. If we want this result, this experience, what do we need to change from a model perspective to be able to achieve that? And so that's ultimately how my story translates beautifully into the model of the Lanby, but it really applies to anyone that's looking to take control over their health and feel like they have the information and resources at their disposal to be more informed and in control.
And did you ultimately find the answers that satisfied you for the root cause of some of the experiences that you've had over the years?
Totally. It was such an unlock for me. And unfortunately, I think that reversing that is harder to do than it is to once you even realize it. It's harder to actually implement those changes than it is to be aware of them. So I'm still on that journey, but at least knowing what the root cause is and not just dismissing it as, oh, this is a possible effect of chemotherapy when it wasn't, or this is a possible effect of tamoxifen, which it wasn't. I have a lot more clarity and I also have the support from the wellness advisors to be able to make the right changes to my lifestyle to be able to get my health to where it needs to be.
And what role does epigenetics play in this with gene expression?
There's a lot. I think we're just starting to really leverage genetics and epigenetics into our approach. But I think it has a lot to do with how our bodies absorb, whether it's nutrients, whether it's how they process carbohydrates and glucose, and ultimately the way in which our bodies respond to these triggers. determines our increased risk or decreased risk for certain diseases. So let's take glucose as an example. I happen to be very sensitive to glucose. And you could see that through your genetics, but you could also see that through a continuous glucose monitor. And so knowing that, if I were to not do anything about that and just completely live my life without caring about that sensitivity, then again, like I'm just increasing my risk of not only prediabetes, but also all the other diseases that come from insulin resistance. Obviously diabetes is one, but your brain health is another, cancer is another, heart disease is another. There's so many different manifestations. Metabolic health is truly the root cause of most chronic diseases. And I take that approach to say, how can I be a lot more thoughtful in how I ingest carbs? How do I know which carbs are going to be better for me than others? And again, a lot of that I can learn through a continuous glucose monitor, but having that impetus to do a continuous glucose monitor came from genetics. The other example of that is how you absorb nutrients. So a lot of people are deficient in their B vitamins because the way in which they absorb B vitamins is completely different. Like they need a methylated B vitamin as opposed to an unmethylated B vitamin because of the MTHFR gene. And so unless you have a physician who is really assessing whether or not you have that mutation, they might be giving you a supplement or assuming that you're getting enough of these vitamins from your diet when you're not. So that's where genetics can really play a part in how you absorb. And I think, again, that's just scratching the surface. There's a lot now that we're starting to do at the Lanby to uncover how we can further personalize your lifestyle and your intake based on what your genetics say about you.
It took a shoulder surgery for me to realize that I was severely B12 deficient and ended up on shots for a year. And of course, now I'm good. It's just
Wow.
interesting how we come across some of the biggest problems in our lives and we don't even know that it's happening because you think you feel what's normal for you. So you don't really challenge it. You're just like, yeah, I'm a little tired today. I'm a little run down. And this seems to be going on for a period of time that's longer than what it should. But I'm getting older. So we justify a lot of things very
Totally.
quickly at the same time.
So
Um,
true.
Now, you guys blend conventional, holistic, and functional medicine. How do these three words come together to create a unique patient-led experience with the Lanby?
It's funny because when we first started the Lanby, I really did not like the word holistic. I just felt like it was very woo,
I'm with you.
very
Yeah.
unscientific. And I am very much about alternative medicine and integrative medicine, but I very much believe that you need science to be able to validate that these modalities have efficacy and are worth investing in. So the term holistic is tough. I do think that most people think of holistic when they think about just looking at the person as a whole person. So not just looking at your reproductive health as one silo and your metabolic health as another silo and your brain health as another silo and your cardiovascular health. We're trained because of the way that the healthcare system is set up to go directly to specialists and treat each part of our body as an individual system. And so the goal of the Lanby and all of these modalities really help to bridge the body and all of these systems of the body as one interconnected system. Because ultimately, when you look at the body, that's how you can get to the root cause, is by figuring out what is that sort of one weak spot within that system that's affecting the entire system from working at its optimal level. And so sometimes that manifests in one part of your body, but that doesn't mean that you can figure out what the root cause is by looking at that one part of your body independently, right? Like you might be getting migraines. You're not going to go to a neurologist necessarily to treat those migraines because that could be something completely unrelated to your brain. It could be inflammation in your body. It could be your hormone health. It could be something else that, again, a normal neurologist is not going to uncover. And so that's where I think when you think about primary care being a first line of defense, you want a physician who's going to look at all of these different symptoms and all of these different systems as one interconnected system. Does that make sense? And so functional medicine is that, right? Like it's thinking about the body as one interconnected unit. And then you have integrative medicine, which is really about how do we leverage both Eastern and Western modalities to be able to treat the root cause of that symptom. So whether it's acupuncture, whether it's a supplement, whether it's just general lifestyle, stress management, diet, in addition to leveraging conventional medicine where there's a place for it. And then, of course, there's primary care. So primary care, again, there is a preventive element to it. We want to be looking at your cardiovascular health. We want to be looking at we want to be doing the preventive screenings, the mammograms, the MRIs when needed, the colorectal, colonoscopy screenings, et cetera. But at the same time, oftentimes primary care doctors, they're being leveraged as urgent care because of how little time they spend with us. And so while they might say, oh, you haven't been to the dermatologist in a while, it's time for your derm screening, that's really all they're doing from a preventive perspective. What we wanted to do was say, let's see that there's a value for primary care, but there's also a value for all of these other modalities. And what's actually happening is that in this world of holistic medicine, we're creating just as many silos, because some people go to a naturopath and some people then have their functional medicine doctor on the side. And then some people also have their primary care doctor on the side. And so you now have, again, all of these different specialists giving you information as opposed to one unified team that's guiding you through all of these different aspects of your health and wellness. And so that's where the Lanby is really unique, is that we bring all these modalities under one umbrella through a care team model. And that allows us to shift focus and gears based on what you're coming in with and how your health evolves, because it will naturally evolve.
It's so interesting because it becomes more of a whole body approach where you're able to track everything at the same time, which logically just makes sense that you would want to do that. So why is it that the modern healthcare system isn't motivated to, one, look at it that way, and two, get to the root cause?
So I think it's not that, okay, so one, there's no training in root cause medicine in traditional medical school. So most doctors, when you say root cause, like that doesn't ring a bell to them. Again, it's not their fault. It's just how they were trained. The other side of it is the incentive piece. So the way in which doctors are paid in a traditional insurance-based model is based on volume. So the more procedures they do and the more visits they complete, the more they can then submit for reimbursement from insurance, the more codes they can submit, et cetera. And they're incentivized to just rack up volume as opposed to spending quality time with each patient, really getting to the root cause and supporting them through the next steps. So I think there's that sort of mismatch of incentives. Like doctors, I think ultimately they became doctors because they do care, but the system doesn't allow them to feel like there's value in spending more time with patients. And so oftentimes that's why a lot of doctors go concierge, is because the way in which they're practicing medicine doesn't align with their values. It doesn't align with how they believe care should be delivered. So I think that there's systemic issues, right? Like, especially when you're in a hospital system and like they just want to keep care within the hospital. They make more money, the more procedures, the sicker you are, that's better for the hospital. And so that's also why sometimes taking care outside of the hospital is going to be better.
Is that what you call sick care?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Now, you talk about from a concierge standpoint what you guys are able to do, but do you accept insurance?
So we don't accept insurance for our membership fee. Again, that would completely derail the realignment of incentives between the physicians and patients, because if we used insurance, then we would still be subject to the same incentives of more volume, more revenue. So instead, we have a flat membership fee structure, which allows us to sort of change focus away from the dollars associated with each patient and instead focus on the patient themselves and thinking about their retention and their success, because the happier they are, the healthier they are, the more likely to feel that they will feel that this is a good fit. This is something that they want to renew and continue to invest in. So we wanted to remove dollars outside of the math that people have when they're thinking about each interaction with their provider. And similarly with the physician, we didn't want them to feel like, oh, by the way, I'm going to review these labs with you, but I need to charge you for this encounter. We wanted it to feel like you're a member. Okay, everything is included after that. So all of your visits are included in the membership fee, all of the coordination of care that we do with specialist referrals and imaging and records consolidations included. All the chat conversations that you have with your care team are included. So it's really this ongoing, continuous relationship that you're building with your care team in an organic way and in a way that really aligns with the shared values of both the physician and the patient. When it comes to insurance, though, there is still a role for insurance. So most of our members do carry insurance, and they use their insurance for the cost of the labs. So we draw the labs on site, but the lab will then pick up those labs to process them and bill your insurance directly.
That's what I was
Prescriptions,
curious. That's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
prescriptions, specialist referrals, imaging. So we try to use your insurance as much as possible. I will say we've gotten so much pressure from investors, from industry to say, like, why don't you just bundle everything into one cost? So take insurance completely out of the equation and just increase your membership fee to be able to avoid patients having to feel like, oh, but I'm actually using my insurance for this, or I'm using my insurance for this. And that's just something that I fundamentally disagree with, because not everyone needs the same diagnostics. Not everyone needs the same prescriptions. Not everyone needs the same labs. And so for us to just like almost bundle, but obviously overcharge people for things that they don't necessarily need really doesn't align with my values as a founder. I very much believe that if we want to deliver personalized care in a way that maximizes the dollars out the door, the way to do that is to say, what do we need to cover in-house and what can we cover in-house? And what are the other dollars that are already being spent through insurance that we can leverage so that ultimately the patient feels like they're maximizing the value of the resources that are at their disposal. So that's where I think the model really benefits both us, but also the patient, right? Like we're thinking through, how do we be a little bit more targeted in saying, you know what, for you as this patient, given your age, given your genetics, given your current lab status, we want to run these tests. We want to include these supplements, and we eventually want you to do these diagnostics. That's one patient, right? Like that cost profile is very different. And by the way, like some patients are going to say, I want to do all of those things. And some patients are going to say, you know what, I just want to start with one thing. And then next year, I'll do the other thing. And that way, you also can pace yourself and feel like when it comes to the recommendations from the Lanby, you know that they're for your benefit, that they align with your lifestyle and where you're at, as opposed to just trying to make you feel like we're running all of these tests and you're maximizing the value of your membership. Like it really is tailored to you as an individual.
I absolutely love all that, because it would be very easy for you to say yes to changing the style of membership, but by aligning with your values and staying in alignment with that, it says a lot about the reasons why you're doing this, and you're in it for people to win and to get the care that they actually need, and none of the things that they just don't need.
Exactly. I appreciate that.
The Lanby brand feels incredibly human in an industry that feels cold and transactional. How intentional was that, and how have you used social media to extend the personal connection?
So intentional. Even in the name, we really wanted to create a name that evoked a feeling of hospitality, not just didn't necessarily describe the services that we offer. And so instead of drawing inspiration from the health and wellness industry, we instead drew inspiration from the hospitality industry. We looked at our
Feels like the
favorite.
Four Seasons.
Yeah, no, it's along the same lines. We looked at what are our favorite hotels and members clubs in New York, and what do we like about the names? There's the Bowery, there's the Whitby, there's the Crosby, and you just, when you're there, you feel like there's this whimsical element to it, but there's also this warm feeling. There's also this institutional feeling, like this has been here for a long time, and they're able to play on both sides of the spectrum. And because we wanted this to be a membership and not just a membership in terms of the revenue model, but in terms of the feeling that it evoked for patients, it just made more sense to align ourselves with the hospitality industry. So that's how we thought about the name. And again, similarly, as we thought about the brand and every aspect of how we communicate with members and the sort of broader community, we wanted this to feel exciting. We didn't want people to feel that dread that they normally associate with going to the doctor, right? Like no one likes going to the doctor, but our vision was to change that experience of going to the doctor to be something that you're excited for, to be something that you value because it's your opportunity to engage in a conversation that's going to take your health to the next level, to make you feel more empowered and in control. And again, leveraging the hospitality, but also leveraging that sort of the voice of the Lanby. It's not annoying. It's not telling you, you got to do this and you got to do this. And it's really important to do this. It's more, okay, let's actually educate you on why these things matter and what's actually happening behind the scenes of your body, because education is so empowering. Like the more people know about why glucose is something to, or obviously when I say glucose, I don't just mean glucose itself. I mean circulating glucose that's not needing to be used by your muscles. Like, why does that matter? Why is it bad that we have excess glucose in our bloodstream? What does that actually mean in terms of downstream effects? These are the types of things that then excite people to do something about it, as opposed to just saying, it's really important that you eat healthy. So that's a little bit about when we think about using social media, our blog, our podcast, it's all about educating people in a way that feels exciting and intellectually stimulating.
And you're giving them the gift of taking their personal power back away from a system that has so freely taken it away from them.
Totally. And I think that translates into also how we lead visits. It's not just us talking to you. It's really that conversation of like, how are you feeling? What motivates you? What is inspiring you? Tell me more about what's going on in your day to day, because that provides additional color for the team to be able to say, this is potentially why you're experiencing or why you were seeing these results, right? There's so much more to the picture than just what's on paper. So it's that relationship that's being built and that bidirectional feedback loop that is so important in changing the dynamic of care delivery.
Even just being in that ecosystem, it gives you the opportunity to just relax into the system, and you're going to be more open and honest with a lot of the things that are going on in your life, which maybe you didn't tell your primary care doctor, and that could have been some really relevant information for them to make different diagnoses.
Totally. Absolutely.
So, what's been the hardest part of leading a mission driven company that's trying to innovate and disrupt a system that wasn't built for change?
It's a good question. I think, like most companies, it's finding the right talent. These doctors that we're looking for are not easy to find. And it's not just about finding them, it's also about training them into the Lanby way and making sure that they really subscribe to this idea of collaborative visits with not just the physician, the patient, but also a registered dietitian. So it's finding those right doctors, I think, that are going to be a right fit for the Lanby, for our patients, for our team dynamic. So I think once we can unlock what our training program will look like down the line, I think that will be a huge game changer for our ability to be able to grow the Lanby beyond New York.
I love that. Yeah, I love that you mentioned nutrition as well. It's pretty commonly known that doctors don't receive a lot of training on nutrition, and very interesting that's the case. So I love that you guys are focusing on that.
Yeah, yeah. And again, to that point, we don't necessarily expect that doctors provide guidance on nutrition. That's where the registered dietitian comes into play. And so, again, going back to the model, I think that in most other practices, there's a mismatch of expectations from patients to think that doctors can provide you with that guidance and also coach you through it, where that's really not their expertise, nor is that allowing them to operate at the top of their license and what they were trained on. So coupling their expertise with that of a registered dietitian really satisfies both sides of the coin.
And then post appointment, what does it look like when somebody is transitioning out of an appointment? They've gone through the process, and now what are the next steps? Are they receiving emails through newsletters or any additional information? Do they remain in the system itself?
Yeah. So we, after every follow-up visit, provide a care plan. And that care plan includes tailored recommendations for your diet, for exercise, for supplements, for medications, for specialist referrals, for advanced diagnostics, for preventive screenings, as well as resources like podcast links that are relevant, product recommendations that we like. So it's really your one-stop shop resource list for everything that we want you to focus on in the next 3 to 4 months. So it's not meant to be overwhelming. It's meant to really help clarify what are the priority areas and how do you get there. Obviously, we talk you through the care plan so that it's very clear and streamlined, so it's easy to implement. But then the goal is that we touch base about 3 months later to repeat labs, see to what extent those changes have affected your lab levels, and then we'll tweak that care plan accordingly. So we basically iterate that care plan every quarter, and we meet with you to go through what the changes are, how you're feeling, what are the challenges that you're experiencing and roadblocks that are preventing you from implementing some of these changes. So it's very much an ongoing iterative process that's validated through data. But data, again, isn't everything. It's how we package that data into a way that fits into your lifestyle that is most important. And then we also have an app that allows our members to engage with their care team in between those quarterly checkpoints. So that can be a question like, oh, I just listened to this podcast and they were talking about a supplement that seemed really interesting. What do you think about it? Or I just experienced this like really bad heartburn and it's been several days and it's not going away. What could it be? It could be anywhere from acute to a preventive measure. But the goal is for us to use that as ability to keep the conversation going. And we can always schedule a one-on-one chat to be able to dive deeper into a topic. Again, it doesn't have to stick to that strict quarterly cadence. And then we also have members who say, I don't like this idea of a quarterly cadence. Seeing my doctor that often feels too overwhelming. I want to stick to biannual, and that's also okay. We work our model into what works best for you. But I think it's that convenience of accessing your care team through multiple different channels that creates that ongoing progress and allows people to really see change in their health. And then also the continuity of care, right? Like you're not jumping from one provider to another, you're building that long-term relationship. So even if it has been 6 months since the last time we've seen you, we're building off of the conversation that we last had. We have all of your history. We know your sort of behavioral disposition to be able to then provide a much more personalized recommendation with whatever it is that we're talking about at that moment in time.
And if you could leave the audience with one piece of advice to get well better today, what would it be?
I love that question. And the reason that I do is because oftentimes in these conversations, it can be very overwhelming to go off and look for a doctor that has all of these credentials and a model that sort of supports this type of care delivery. And so if there's one piece of advice that I would offer, it's focus on the basics. Make sure that you're moving your body every day. Make sure that you're eating whole foods. Minimize the ingredients on any label of products that you are buying that are packaged. Try to cook at home as much as you can. Just be a little bit more informed in what you're consuming, how you're consuming it, how you're living your day to day. Make sure that you're getting at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. These are the free tools that every person can implement into their day to day that will be transformative for their longevity. And I think that oftentimes in this world of heightened wellness attention, we're losing sight of that because we're talking about red light therapy, we're talking about cold plunges, and we're talking about infrared saunas. And those are the things that can be expensive and often inaccessible. And so as long as we can really master the basics, I think that will be 90% of the battle.
Chloe Harrouche, thank you for being here today. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Tell everybody how they can reach you and connect with the Lanby.
There's a lot you can learn from our website, thelanby.com. We also have a very active social media account at the.lanby. And then we also have a podcast where we interview specialists in the health and wellness space to be able to really bridge the gap between that expertise and the patient in layman's terms. So it's a great way to stay informed and dive deep in topics that you otherwise feel might be too far away or inaccessible. And then our newsletter is probably the last place where you can find us. You could just sign up for that also on our website.
And all the links, guys, will be in the show notes, so be sure to check that out. Chloe,
thank you.